They say blood is thicker than water, but on that Christmas morning, as my father Vernon threw a shoebox at my feet while my siblings unwrapped millions in gifts, I discovered blood means nothing when you were never really family to begin with. My name is Mason Whitfield, or at least that's what I've been called for 28 years. I teach history at Lincoln High School in Stamford, Connecticut, about 40 minutes from my family's estate in Greenwich. Every morning, I wake up in my one-bedroom apartment, brew coffee in the same mug I've used since college, and drive my 2018 Honda Civic to a job I genuinely love. To most people, that sounds like a decent life. To the Whitfields, it's absolute failure. You need to understand something about the Whitfields. My father, Vernon, built his real estate empire from the ground up, turning a small inheritance into a portfolio worth hundreds of millions. He measures everything in dollars and market value, including his children. My mother, Judith, comes from old money, the kind of family that has wings named after them at hospitals and museums. She married Vernon because he had the hunger her blue blood family had lost generations ago. Then there are my siblings. Bianca, my older sister at 31, is everything Vernon wanted in a child. She graduated summa cum laude from Wharton, climbed the corporate ladder at Pharmacon with ruthless efficiency, and just last month closed a deal that would net the company $50 million in pure profit. She wears designer suits that cost more than my monthly salary and dates men based on their investment portfolios. Vernon calls her his masterpiece. Preston, my younger brother at 26, is Vernon 2.0. He went straight from Yale to Wall Street, where he became the youngest senior analyst at Cromwell and Associates. He drives a Porsche, owns a penthouse in Tribeca, and has a different model on his arm every family event. Vernon sees him as his legacy, the son who will inherit not just the money, but the empire itself. And then there's me, the middle child who chose to major in education, despite Vernon offering to pay double tuition if I switched to business. The son who turned down a position at Vernon's company to teach teenagers about the Revolutionary War and the Civil Rights Movement. The family member who gets introduced at parties as our other son he teaches, in the same tone people use to announce terminal illness. I knew from childhood that I was different. While Bianca memorized stock tickers and Preston played merger and acquisition with his toys, I read books about ancient civilizations and wrote stories about time travelers. When Vernon brought us to his office, they asked about profit margins. I asked why his secretary looked so tired and whether she got vacation days. Vernon said I was soft. Judith said I was sensitive. Neither was a compliment in the Whitfield household. The Christmas I'm about to tell you about started like every other. December 24th. I pulled into the circular driveway of the Greenwich estate, parking my Honda behind the garage as instructed so it wouldn't be visible from the street. The house looked like something out of a movie, with professional decorators having spent 3 days hanging lights, arranging wreaths, and positioning a 20-foot Norwegian spruce in the front window. It was performance art, really. The Whitfields didn't celebrate Christmas, they showcased it. Walking through those massive oak doors felt like entering a courtroom where I was perpetually on trial. Vernon stood in the foyer, bourbon in hand, appraising me like a disappointing quarterly report. "Mason," he said, not son. Never son, unless there were important guests around. "I see you're still driving that Honda." "It gets good mileage," I replied, the same response I'd given for 3 years. "Bianca just leased a Range Rover," he countered, as if my car choice was a personal attack on the family honor. That's how every interaction went. Every conversation became a comparison. Every achievement dismissed, every choice questioned. Teaching wasn't a noble profession. It was settling for mediocrity. My apartment wasn't cozy, it was embarrassingly small. My girlfriend left me 2 years ago, and Vernon actually said, "Smart girl, she knew you weren't going anywhere." But I kept coming back, every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. Maybe I was hoping for something to change, for one moment of recognition that I was enough. Or maybe I was just a masochist who couldn't let go of the fantasy that somewhere underneath Vernon's cruelty and Judith's indifference was actual parental love. I should have known that Christmas would be different. The signs were all there, but sometimes we're so used to the baseline level of dysfunction that we miss when something darker is brewing. That shoebox Vernon tossed at my feet wasn't just another insult. It was 28 years of lies finally coming undone. The Whitfield estate during Christmas looked like a luxury magazine had exploded across 10 acres of perfectly manicured Connecticut property. Every surface that could hold a decoration did. The professional decorators Judith hired from Manhattan had outdone themselves this year, stringing Italian lights through the bare oak trees, wrapping golden ribbons around every column, and positioning animated reindeer that probably cost more than my car across the front lawn. Inside, the excess continued. The foyer's chandelier had been adorned with crystal snowflakes that caught the light and threw rainbows across the marble floor. Garland wrapped around the dual staircases like green and gold serpents, and the air smelled of cinnamon and pine, though I knew it came from expensive candles rather than any actual baking. The Whitfields had staff for that. "Mason, darling, you look tired," Judith said, approaching me with her standard air-kiss greeting. Careful not to actually make contact that might smudge her makeup. She wore a cream cashmere dress that probably cost more than I made in a month. Her blonde hair perfectly styled in a way that looked effortless but required 2 hours at the salon. "End of semester grading," I explained. "You know how it is." "No, I really don't," she replied with that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "But I imagine it's quite tedious. All those papers to read, the same mistakes over and over. It must be mind-numbing." Preston emerged from the living room, already 3 drinks in, judging by his loosened tie and the volume of his voice. "Mason, brother, how's the noble profession treating you? Save any lives with your lesson on the Boston Tea Party?" "Actually, I had a student get into Columbia because of my recommendation letter," I said, immediately regretting sharing anything positive. "Columbia?" Vernon's voice boomed from behind me. "Decent school. Preston turned them down for Yale. Didn't have the right connections for what we needed." Everything was like that. Every accomplishment immediately diminished, compared, and found wanting. We moved to the dining room for Christmas Eve dinner, where Martina, the housekeeper who'd been with the family for 15 years, had prepared a feast that would feed 20, though there were only 5 of us. "Bianca, tell Mason about the Pharmacon deal," Vernon commanded more than suggested, cutting into his prime rib with surgical precision. Bianca launched into a detailed explanation of how she'd undercut 3 competitors, leveraged inside information from a contact at the FDA, and secured exclusive distribution rights for a new arthritis medication. She spoke about market manipulation and price inflation like she was describing a recipe for apple pie, completely casual about tactics that danced on the edge of ethical boundaries. $50 million in projected revenue for Q1 alone, she finished, dabbing her lips with her napkin. "They're talking about making me the youngest VP in company history." "That's wonderful," Judith cooed. "Vernon, didn't you say the Hamptons house next to the Worthingtons is for sale? It would be perfect for Bianca." "Already put in an offer," Vernon replied, then turned to Preston. "And you? Tell us about the Morrison acquisition." Preston grinned. That same smug expression he'd perfected at age 12 when he'd convinced our parents to send me to summer school while he went to Europe. "Closed it yesterday. $40 million deal. The old man never saw it coming. We basically stole his company out from under him. He'll have to sell his house, probably his boat too. The best part? His son is in my analyst class. Kid has no idea his dad's company just got gutted." They laughed. Actually laughed at destroying someone's life. I pushed my food around my plate, appetite gone. "Mason's awfully quiet," Vernon observed. "No tales of triumph from the classroom, no 16-year-olds whose lives you've changed with your profound insights into the War of 1812. "I'm teaching them critical thinking," I said quietly. how to question sources, examine evidence, understand that history is written by the victors, and sometimes the truth is more complex than what's in textbooks. Critical thinking, Vernon repeated, making it sound like a disease. That's what you call it when you can't teach them anything useful. No wonder public education is failing. I teach at a private school, Dad. Barely counts as private with what they pay you. The rest of dinner continued in the same vein. Every attempt at conversation became an opportunity for comparison, for reminding me of my place in the family hierarchy. By the time Martina brought out dessert, an elaborate chocolate souffle that went largely uneaten, I was counting the hours until I could leave. That night, lying in my childhood bedroom that had been converted into a guest room the moment I left for college, I stared at the ceiling and wondered why I kept subjecting myself to this. But Christmas morning would answer that question in ways I never expected. Christmas morning arrived with its usual orchestrated perfection. Vernon insisted everyone be in the living room by 9 sharp, dressed appropriately, which in Whitfield terms meant nothing less than business casual. I put on the only dress shirt I'd brought, a blue Oxford that Judith immediately noticed had a tiny stain near the pocket. "Really, Mason, on Christmas?" she sighed, as if I'd personally offended baby Jesus himself. The living room had been transformed into what looked like a Saks Fifth Avenue window display. The tree, adorned with real gold leaf ornaments and crystals from some boutique in Paris, stood like a monument to excess. Underneath, presents were arranged by recipient in perfect sections, each wrapped in coordinating paper that matched the room's color scheme. Vernon's assistant had probably spent days on this. "Everyone, sit," Vernon commanded, positioning himself next to the tree like a king about to bestow favors on his subjects. He wore a burgundy smoking jacket that he'd bought specifically for Christmas mornings, claiming it was tradition, though the tradition was only 3 years old. "Before we begin," he said, holding up his crystal tumbler of whiskey despite it being barely past 9, "I want to say how proud I am of what this family has accomplished this year. We've expanded our holdings, increased our social standing, and maintained the Whitfield reputation for excellence." He paused, looking at each of us, his gaze lingering on me with something I couldn't quite identify. "Well, most of us have." "Let's start with Bianca," he announced, his entire demeanor shifting to one of genuine warmth, something I rarely saw directed at anyone. He handed her a small silver box with a massive red bow. Bianca opened it with practiced elegance, gasping at the Mercedes key fob inside. "Daddy, you didn't! S-Class, burgundy exterior with cream leather interior, fully loaded. It's in the driveway. $180,000 of German engineering for my star performer." She actually squealed, throwing her arms around Vernon's neck. He hugged her back, a real embrace, not the stiff pat on the shoulder I got on the rare occasions he acknowledged my existence. "Preston, you're next," Vernon said, pulling out a cream envelope from his jacket pocket. The paper looked expensive, the kind that comes from stationers who don't list prices. Preston opened it carefully, his eyes scanning the document inside. His jaw dropped. "Is this real?" The deed to the Montauk property. $12 million, waterfront, 7 bedrooms, private beach. You've earned it, son. A real Whitfield man deserves a real estate portfolio. Preston stood up, shaking Vernon's hand before pulling him into one of those masculine half-hugs. "This is incredible, Dad. The guys at the firm are going to lose their minds." "That's the point," Vernon replied, actually smiling. "Let them know what real success looks like." Then came the moment. Vernon turned to me, and the warmth disappeared from his face like someone had flipped a switch. He reached behind the tree and pulled out a beat-up shoebox, the kind that might have held sneakers 20 years ago. The Nike logo was faded, and one corner was held together with duct tape. Instead of handing it to me like he had with my siblings' gifts, he tossed it. Actually tossed it, like you'd throw trash into a bin. The box landed at my feet with a hollow thud. "Your turn, Mason," he said, his voice cold and flat. Though, honestly, losers don't deserve real presents. The room went silent. Even Preston, who usually joined in on the mockery, looked uncomfortable. Judith shifted in her seat, her fingers tightening around her coffee mug. "Vernon," she said quietly, "it's Christmas morning." "What? Should I pretend he's something he's not? He sits in a classroom making $40,000 a year, living in that pathetic apartment, driving that embarrassment of a car. He's a Whitfield in name only." My hands trembled as I picked up the shoebox. The tape was old, yellowed with age. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper that had seen better days, was a single photograph. The edges were worn like someone had held it many times, and the colors had that slightly faded quality of pictures from the late 90s. The photo showed an infant, maybe 6 months old, with a full head of dark hair and bright eyes. The baby was being held by a couple I'd never seen before. The man was clearly Latino, with strong features, calloused hands visible even in the photo, wearing a work shirt with Hector embroidered on the pocket. The woman holding the baby had my exact nose, my same crooked smile, wearing a hotel uniform with a name tag too blurry to read. "Who are these people?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Vernon took another sip of his whiskey. "Turn it over." Written on the back in Vernon's harsh handwriting were 5 words that made my entire world tilt. "Your real parents didn't want you either." The photograph shook in my hands as the words sank in. Real parents. The room spun slightly and I had to grip the arm of the couch to steady myself. Everything suddenly made sense. Every cold dismissal. Every comparison where I fell short, every moment I felt like an outsider in my own family. "You knew," I said, looking at Judith. "You both knew this whole time, and you never told me?" Judith wouldn't meet my eyes. She stared into her coffee mug like it held the secrets of the universe. "We were going to tell you when you were 18, but then you were applying to colleges, and the timing never seemed right." "The timing?" I stood up, still clutching the photo. 28 years, and the timing was never right. Vernon shrugged, the gesture so casual it made my blood boil. "What difference would it have made? We gave you everything. Private schools, tutors, college tuition, a name that opens doors. We pulled you out of poverty and gave you a life. These people," I held up the photo, my voice stronger now. "Tell me about them. Tell me everything." "Hector and Rosa Valdez," Vernon said, pronouncing their names like they left a bad taste in his mouth. "Mexican immigrants. Your father worked construction, probably illegal though we never verified. Fell off scaffolding when you were 2 months old. No life insurance, no savings, nothing. Your mother was a hotel maid at the Marriott downtown. When Hector died, she couldn't afford to keep you." Bianca finally spoke up, her voice uncharacteristically quiet. "Dad, this is cruel. Even for you, this is too much." "Cruel? We're the ones who saved him. Rosa was being deported. No papers, no money, a baby she couldn't feed. Our lawyer handled the adoption. We gave her enough money to start over wherever she ended up, and we gave him a life he never would have had." "Where is she now?" I demanded. "Rosa, where is she?" "How would we know?" Vernon replied. "The adoption was closed. She went back to Mexico or wherever, and that was that. We never looked back. Why would we?" Preston cleared his throat. "So, Mason's adopted. So what? He's still family." Vernon laughed, harsh and bitter. "Family? Look at him. We gave him every opportunity to succeed, and what did he do? He became a teacher. A teacher! You think that's coincidence? Bad blood always shows. His father was a laborer who couldn't even stay on a roof. His mother was a maid. We tried to elevate him, but genetics are genetics." "Genetics?" I felt something inside me snap. "You think I'm a disappointment because of genetics? Not because you treated me like a defective product from day one. Not because every achievement I had was compared to theirs and found wanting. We treated you the same as our real children." Judith finally spoke, her voice defensive. "Real children," I repeated. "There it is. Your real children got love, I got tolerance, your real children got encouragement. I got constant reminders that I wasn't good enough." I looked at the photo again. Rosa's face was tired but kind. Hector's smile was genuine, proud even, holding this baby like it was the most precious thing in the world. They looked poor but happy. They looked like they loved their child. "Mason, sit down," Vernon commanded. "You're being dramatic. We're still your family. Nothing has changed." "Everything has changed," I said. "You didn't save me. You bought me, like one of your properties. An investment that didn't yield the returns you expected." I walked toward the door, still holding the photo. Vernon's voice followed me. "Where do you think you're going? We're not done here." "Yes, we are," I said, turning back to face them all. "I'm going to find her, Rosa, my mother, my real mother." "With what resources?" Vernon scoffed. "You think you can afford a private investigator on a teacher's salary?" "I'll figure it out." "If you walk out that door now, don't expect to walk back in," Vernon threatened. "Choose them over us and you're done here. No more family dinners, no more holidays, no inheritance." I actually laughed. "Inheritance? You just made it clear I was never getting that anyway. Family dinners? You mean the monthly humiliation sessions? Holidays where you literally throw garbage at me while showering them with millions?" I looked at Bianca and Preston. "You two want to know the really sad part? I actually loved you, despite everything. I thought we were siblings. But we weren't, were we? I was just the charity case your parents brought home." Bianca started to speak, but I was already walking out. The last thing I heard was Vernon saying, "Let him go. He'll come crawling back when he realizes what he's given up." But I knew I wouldn't. For the first time in 28 years, I was going to find where I really belonged. 3 months of searching had led me here, to a small apartment complex in East Los Angeles, paint peeling from the walls and laundry hanging from every balcony. I'd spent my entire savings on a private investigator named Tommy Chen, who specialized in immigration cases and lost family members. Every lead had been a dead end until he found a Rosa Valdez who'd somehow returned to the country in 2008, legally this time, through a work visa program for healthcare workers. Standing at the door of apartment 2B, I could hear Spanish music playing inside and the sound of children laughing. My hand trembled as I knocked. 28 years of questions, of wondering why I never fit, all came down to this moment. The door opened, and there she was. Rosa Valdez, older now, her hair streaked with gray, wearing scrubs that suggested she'd just come from work. But the eyes were the same as in the photo, the same as mine when I looked in the mirror. "Yes," she said in accented English, then stopped, her hand flying to her chest. "Dios mío." "Rosa Valdez?" I asked, though I already knew. "Mason," the word came out as barely a whisper. "My baby, is it really you?" She pulled me into an embrace before I could answer, sobbing into my shoulder, speaking rapid Spanish that I didn't understand, but somehow felt in my bones. She smelled like vanilla and disinfectant, like hard work and hope combined. Come in," she said, pulling me inside. The apartment was small but immaculate, every surface covered with photographs, religious candles, and crocheted doilies. "Carmen, Diego, ven acá, come here now." 2 people emerged from the kitchen, both in their 20s. The woman, Carmen, had my same stubborn chin. The man, Diego, moved with Hector's solid presence I recognized from the photo. "This is your brother," Rosa announced, tears streaming down her face. "Mason has come home." They didn't hesitate. Carmen hugged me like she'd known me forever. Diego clapped me on the back, grinning. "We've been waiting for you, hermano. You knew about me?" "Mama never stopped talking about you," Carmen said. "Every birthday, she lights a candle. Every Christmas, she sets a place at the table." Rosa led me to the couch, holding my hands like I might disappear. Tell me everything. The family who took you, the Whitfields, they were good to you? I wanted to lie, to spare her feelings, but I couldn't. They gave me education and opportunity, but not love. Never love. I just found out 3 months ago that I was adopted. They threw it in my face like a weapon. Rosa's face crumbled. I'm so sorry, mijo. I thought I was giving you a better life. After your papa died, I had nothing. No papers, no money. The rent was due. You were crying from hunger. The social worker said the Whitfields were rich, established, that you'd have everything. Why didn't you try to contact me? The adoption was closed. They made me sign papers. And then ICE came, and I was deported when you were barely 1 year old. It took me 7 years to get back legally, training as a nursing assistant in Mexico, learning English, applying for work visas. By then, the lawyer said the adoption was irreversible. Diego brought out a box from the hallway closet. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Hector on construction sites, always smiling. Rosa pregnant, radiant despite obvious exhaustion, and baby pictures of me I'd never seen, including one of all 3 of us at what looked like a park, having a picnic on a scratchy blanket. Your father was a good man, Rosa said, tracing Hector's face in one photo. He worked 3 jobs trying to save for your future. The day he fell, he was working overtime to buy you a crib. A real one, not the drawer we'd been using. Tell me about him, I said. For the next 2 hours she did. How Hector had cried when I was born. How he'd sing Mexican lullabies even though he couldn't carry a tune. How he'd written letters to me for when I grew up, letters lost when she was deported. Carmen shared how Rosa had worked 16-hour days to bring Diego and her to America legally. Diego talked about growing up hearing stories about their lost brother. We tried to find you, Carmen said. When Mama finally got citizenship last year, we hired someone to look. But Whitfield is a common name, and the sealed records meant we had nothing to go on. Rosa squeezed my hands. You're a teacher? That's what the investigator said when he called. History, high school. Her face lit up with pride that Vernon's never had. A teacher. You help children learn, shape their futures. Your father would be so proud. He always said education was the path forward. The Whitfields thought it was beneath them. Then they're fools, Rosa said fiercely. Teaching is noble work. You're building something that matters. 6 months have passed since that day in East Los Angeles, and my life looks nothing like it did before. I still teach at Lincoln High, but now my lessons carry a different weight. When I talk about immigration, about the American dream, about families separated by circumstances beyond their control, I'm not just reciting from textbooks. I'm telling my family's story. Rosa came to my school's International Day last month. She stood in front of 200 teenagers and told them about arriving in America with nothing but hope, about losing everything and fighting to get back, about the son she had to give up and the miracle of finding him again. Half the room was crying by the end, including me. My students look at me differently now, not as just another teacher, but as someone who understands that history isn't just dates and facts, but real people making impossible choices. The Valdez family has embraced me completely. Sunday dinners at Rosa's apartment have replaced the cold Whitfield gatherings. The table is cramped, the apartment gets too hot with everyone packed in, and someone always has to sit on a folding chair, but there's more love in that tiny space than in all 10,000 square feet of the Greenwich estate. Carmen's daughter, Sophia, calls me Tio Mason. Diego is teaching me to fix cars on weekends. Every Valdez man should know his way around an engine, he says, echoing something Hector used to say. Preston reached out 3 months after Christmas. We met for coffee in neutral territory, a Starbucks halfway between Greenwich and my apartment. I had no idea Dad was capable of that, he said, stirring his latte nervously. The way he threw that box at you, what he said about genetics and bad blood, that wasn't right. It wasn't just that day, Preston. It was every day, every comment about my career, every comparison, every reminder that I wasn't enough. "I know," he admitted. "I see it now. We were so caught up in his approval that we became him. I'm trying to be different." We text occasionally now. He's still on Wall Street, still making obscene money, but he's asking different questions. Last week, he asked if any of my students needed scholarship help for college. It's a start. Bianca took longer to come around. Her first contact was a handwritten note on her personal stationery. "You were always the bravest of us. It just took me too long to see it." We had lunch last month. She seemed smaller somehow, less certain. "Do you know what it's like," she asked, "to realize your entire value system is based on impressing someone incapable of real love?" "Yes," I told her. "I know exactly what that's like." Judith sent a package 2 weeks ago with no note. Just all my childhood photos they'd removed from the family albums. Pictures of birthdays, Christmases, school plays, all the moments they'd erased after deciding I wasn't really family. I looked through them with Rosa, and she cried seeing the boy she'd lost growing up in someone else's home. Vernon never reached out. I heard through Preston that he's told people I had a breakdown. The teaching finally drove me crazy. He's erased me from the family narrative completely, which feels appropriate somehow. I was never really part of his story anyway. The most precious gift came from Rosa on my 29th birthday. She'd saved money for months to have a photo restored and enlarged. Hector holding me at 1 month old, standing in front of the construction site where he was building a children's hospital. On the back, she'd written what Hector used to say, "My son will have everything I couldn't give him, but first he'll have everything I can. My love, my hope, my belief that he can be anything." I finally understood that Christmas morning wasn't when my life fell apart. It was when it came together. Vernon's cruelty, meant to destroy me, had instead given me the greatest gift imaginable: the truth. Those 5 words on the back of that photo, "Your real parents didn't want you either," were a lie that led me to the truth. Rosa had wanted me desperately. Hector had died trying to provide for me. They hadn't given me up because they didn't want me, but because they loved me enough to let go when they couldn't hold on. Real families aren't built on bloodlines or bank accounts. They're built on choosing each other again and again, even when circumstances try to tear you apart. The Valdez family had been choosing me for 28 years, setting a place at their table, lighting candles on my birthday, telling stories about the boy they'd lost but never stopped loving. That's what Vernon never understood. Love isn't about return on investment or genetic legacy. It's about Rosa working 16-hour shifts to bring her other children to America legally while never forgetting the one she'd lost. It's about Carmen and Diego accepting me instantly as their brother. It's about a tiny apartment filled with laughter meaning more than a mansion filled with judgment. I was never a Whitfield. I was always a Valdez. It just took a shoebox full of cruelty to show me the way home. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt like you didn't belong or wondered about your place in your family, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if it touched your heart, and subscribe to our channel for more real stories about finding where you truly belong. Remember, family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who shows up, who stays, and who loves you for exactly who you are.